The Point of View is brought to you by Cowbell Coffee. Cowbell Coffee. Taste it, love it. Kel White Charcoal. Happy smile.
Welcome to The Point of View. This is your favorite current affairs show on television. Here on The Point of View on CTTV, we pick the right topics, get the right guests, and ask them relevant questions on issues that matter to you. Well, this show is live and interactive. We're discussing 2 of 3 big audit reports. The Auditor General sent out a number of reports, one on the District Assembly's Common Fund, the other on public boards and statutory institutions, and the third on some education institutions. We're dealing with the first 2 with 2 experts who help us understand what some of the key findings mean and the recommendations going forward. It's interactive. Let's hear from you. We'll be right back. Welcome.
I woke up this morning.
Nothing wakes me up better than a cup of Cowbell coffee. Delicious coffee aroma.
How can you forget your lines again?
I'm sorry, sir, just that it tastes really good.
Cowbell coffee.
Enjoy the delicious creamy coffee taste of 3-in-1 Cowbell coffee.
It's a beautiful day.
Waiting.
Cowbell coffee. Taste it, love it.
This advertisement has been vetted and approved by the FDA.
Hello there. We know what matters today, don't we? Hurry up. Follow safety measures. Drive for hours. Grab a perfect spot. Park smoothly. And then visit another shop and scroll for the opportunities. Tap to pay. Enjoy that extra reward. Get 10% extra cash back when you pay with Visa. How you pay matters.
Welcome back. So the Auditor General has released a number of reports. We're delving into 2 today. The first one is the report on the public accounts of public boards, corporations, and other statutory institutions for the year ending December 31, 2020. The other one is on the management of the utilization of the District Assembly's Common Fund. These are the 2 documents. So one is on what you call MDAs, the others on the district assemblies. Now, the objectives of the audit was to express an opinion on the accounts submitted by each public board, corporation, and other statutory institution to evaluate the adequacy of the system's internal control, compliance with relevant laws, and stated accounting policies and applicable financial rules. And then for the DACF, they wanted to look at whether records have been properly kept, whether all public monies collected have been fully accounted for, and rules, regulations, and procedures properly followed, and whether monies had been expended for the purposes so done. Now, the Auditor General very kindly gave a summary of some of the significant findings and recommendations. So if you go to page 2 of the audit on the public accounts of boards and MDAs, it gives you 7 subcategories of irregularities. So there's one they call outstanding debtors and loans recoverable. My guest will explain what that is. Then there's cash irregularities, payroll irregularities, procurement irregularities, tax irregularities, store irregularities, and contract irregularities. These in total, if you put all of that together, the irregularities amounted to 12.8 billion cedis for 2020. The biggest culprits are the top 2 rows. Outstanding debtors and loans recoverable, 78% of the infractions. That's 10 billion cedis, just one category. The second is cash irregularities, 1.8 billion, 14%. The third most important is on the 4th row, procurement irregularities, 6.58. Now, the other thing the Auditor General does, which is nice, is that he then gives you a 4-year overview of these irregularities. So he says, if you take these 7 categories I've just described, he's now taking them from 2016 to 2020 to give you a sense of whether this is becoming a bigger problem or not. Now look at what he does. For outstanding debtors and loans recoverable, in 2016, the figure was 302 million. It increased to 11.8 billion in 2017, came down to 1.8 billion in 2018, rose to 4.8 billion in 2019, and guess what? 2020 went back to 10 billion. So it's gone up. For cash irregularities as well, 246 million in 2016, goes up roughly in 2017, 149 million, goes up to 1 billion in 2018. Then look at 2020, 1.8 billion. So again, 2020 seems to be one of the biggest. For payroll irregularities as well, that came down from 2019, 66 million to 9.5 million. Okay. Procurement irregularities is the one that kills you. Now look at row 4. I've circled this in red on the screen. Now in 2016, procurement irregularity was 91.5 million. All right. It came down in 2017 to 6.4 million. That's not such a bad thing. 2018 went up 15 million, but that's not so bad. 2019, 37 million. Look at 2020, 846 million. It's almost as if in 2020 we threw procurement out of the window. It's like procurement. So I've circled that for you on the 4th row. Again, tax irregularities. Ali Nachi is interested in this. Again, 24 million 2016, 6 million 2017, 4 million. Then it goes up to almost 200 million in 2019 and comes down in 2020 slightly. Then stores irregularities, that's coming down. Mercifully, it's coming down. But look at the last one. Contract irregularities. Again, from 5 million in 2016, it's now almost 90 million in 2020. So this is very concerning. So if you look at the rings I've circled, of the 7, 4 rings are in 2020 category. That simply tells you that a lot of these things are not getting better. Now, if you come to the district assemblies themselves, again, they've done a quick 4-year overview. Cash irregularities, contract irregularities, procurement, tax, and all of that. Again, you're seeing some big numbers in there. Okay, the whole of 2020, the district assembly irregularities amounted to 77 million cedis. Okay. Now let's talk about some of the quick highlights of what they found. So for the statutory organizations, ECG came up for strong mention. Of all the things ECG did, one of the things that I found interesting was that they procured prepaid meters and conductors amounting to almost 60 million cedis between 2014 and 2016. Items were not used till time of our inspection on 8th August 2019. This was very serious. Of course, ECG management said there were technical issues with the prepaid meters, right? And then they also said they had land issues, so they couldn't use the conductors. Again, ECG incurred expenses to the tune of 182 million cedis as capacity charged by SSNIT. Very, very big indeed. And then they also gave out materials amounting to 11.5 million cedis in loans to 8 beneficiary companies. They were issued between 2014 and 2018. Materials were without any terms of agreement, okay? And a few other things are said about ECG which are concerning. They made a loss amounting to almost 180 million for materials provided on rechargeable jobs. Bust was also seriously considered in the MDA's audit. Again, spent $5.1 million on a project. The materials were yet to be supplied and it's been many, many years, okay? They approved a payment of 30 million in excess of the amount budgeted for. They used BRVs in conveying products from Akosombo to be instead of making use of badges. Could have saved the company and the state almost 400,000 cedis. Lots of other things are said about Bust. I won't spend too much time on Bust. I haven't seen a response from Bust, although they have some management responses. 2 institutions that have responded, we need to be fair to them, GNPC and SSNIT. GNPC had quite a number of infractions listed against them. Key of them being the procurement issues between 2015 and 2018. According to the Auditor General, management of GNPC in contrast to Article 1815, signed and awarded 5 international business contracts totaling $34 million and £464,000 to 5 foreign companies using single source method in 4 of those transactions without seeking for the necessary parliamentary approvals. Now, the GNPC has written a response to that, and I'll come to that shortly. But apart from that infraction, they're also saying that GNPC procured desktop computers, laptops, geo workstations, again without going through the regular procurement that they would have thought. The governing board didn't do some other things as well. They recorded some cyber attacks, and a number of projects had been stalled, totaling over $9 million. GNPC has sent a response. I think we got the response today. They're basically saying that they are not government institution per what the Constitution says. So basically, the Auditor General doesn't understand the law that they are using. So basically, they said they made flawed findings because of failing to apprise themselves of the legal framework of GNPC. And they basically say that Article 1815 does not apply to them because, strictly speaking, a government business is not necessarily the same as a statutory corporation set up for commercial purposes. So GNPC have a 2-page response to the Auditor General. We'll refer to that with my guest. Finally, SSNIT. Every year, SSNIT comes up for mention. They were cited for a number of things. The most important one being the fact that they had lost the country money, a total of $11 million from liquidation of 3 investments, with a total cash outlay of $14 million. Again, SSNIT have sent a statement trying to explain that this happened long before this administration took office, or this leadership team, and then they give some interesting details that we'll come to. Let me introduce my guest. In the studio, I have the Director General of the Internal Audit Agency, Dr. Auditor. He is a chartered accountant, he's a lawyer, and also a local government expert. Doc, great to have you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Great. Now, I also have Dr. Abdallah Ali Nachia, who is a senior lecturer at the University of Ghana School of Law. He's also a fully chartered accountant and lawyer too. Doc, great to have you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Great. There are so many findings I will go through, but I just wanted to take you back to the slide that had the summary of infractions as shown from 2016 to 2020 as our first document. The one I used the red pen to highlight. Please put it back on the screen. I'll take opening comments on that. I noticed that things seem to be getting worse just from a general casual look, because I've circled the higher figures with a red pen. And if you look at it very carefully, for 4 of the 7 categories, 2020 is the biggest or near to the biggest. Okay? Apart from store irregularities, everything else seems to be getting worse. Let me start with Doc in the studio. What does this say to us about the way we manage public finances?
Thank you very much. And let me congratulate the Auditor General for submitting the report in record time, because this relates to financial transactions for the 2020 fiscal year. And ordinarily, within the first 3 months of 2021, the report should be ready. That is the financial accounts. And then they would have to audit it for 2-3 months. So for them to release it in May, June, or July, or August, I think they've done well. And when you look at this analysis, one would conclude that the figures are increasing, especially the outstanding debtors, loans, and recoverable charges. And it is not only for public corporations. When you look at MDAs, DACF, technical universities, public corporations, all of them, it seems to me that outstanding debtors, loans, and recoverable charges are on the increase. In fact, for public boards, as you have shown here, it's about 78% of the total irregularities. It means something is wrong with the system, especially putting in place systems to recover loans, manage our debtors well, and ensure that at least we minimize loan defaulting. So I think it doesn't look good. And especially when you look at cash irregularities, they are the easiest of the irregularities, because it's all about people suppressing the use of cash, people not accounting for funds given to them, and all of that. I'm also curious about the procurement irregularities. At 846 million cedis, it's not too good for a country like that.
It's a big jump.
It's a big jump from 37 million to 846. And then when you look at contract irregularities, from 87 million to 89, it's not too good. But when you look at the absolute figures, Bernard, for the DACF, absolute figures between 2019 to 2020, it dropped by 38%. In 2019, it was 124 million. Irregularities in 2020 was 77 million. But for the public boards, it has jumped to 12 billion cedis from a paltry 5 million cedis. What it means is that it has increased by 135%, which is not too good for us. When you look at the total consolidated fund expenditure of 37 billion, and if you have this amount as irregularities, it is a no-no. And I'm asking myself a number of questions. Whether internal auditors in these institutions were able to flag these irregularities, and if they flag these irregularities, do they have an audit committee to pursue them, to implement them, to the extent that they will have to wait for the external auditors to uncover them? Then the last question I'm asking myself is, after the external auditors have uncovered them and they have reported to us as Ghanaians, what next? Do we leave it at that, or we pursue them to ensure that these 12 billion cedis are recovered or resolved?
We'll answer those questions. Let me come to Dr. Ali. I'm putting I'm putting that chart up for your preliminary comments because I think it's a beautiful summary of where our public institutions are in the past 4 years, 2016 to 2020. So I just wanted you to give me your comments on the fact that for a lot of the categories, the figure seems to be going up. Does this surprise you? What are your comments on this general summary that the Auditor General has given us?
Thank you very much. I joined Dr. Odrosai to say this is really an issue for us. And for me, I keep wondering that if you look at 2017 to 2018, we seem to have gone down with outstanding debtors and loans recoverable. So the question is, why could we not keep that steam of 2018 dip downwards, but rather saw an increase? That will give an idea on what to look out for and how it occurred. We see the same thing for cash irregularities dropping from 2016 to 2017. There is a drop, but it hikes up in 2018 and drops again in 2019, only to go up excessively in 2020. We need to look at where it dipped and find out what accounted for the dip. Were we then obeying the laws? What went wrong for the laws to be sidelined for us to spend so much? Payroll irregularities, you see the same kind of increase, and then it goes down in 2020. We need to find out from 66.2 million down to 9.5 million. Is it a case of some measures working? Eradication of ghost names, payroll audits. If that is what has accounted for this success of a drop of 66 million to 9.5 million, then we need to take the good thing in that measure and pursue it further. Procurement irregularities is deadly. I'll use that word, is deadly. As you rightly said, is it that we've jettisoned the procurement laws? What is happening to public procurement agencies? And if people were found culpable, what was done about the issue? I remember their head himself was found wanting, investigations done, he was suspended. What happened to all the monies recorded in his accounts? Did we retrieve them? If we cannot deal with the head who was found in this issue, definitely then it means others would have it as a free-for-all right. Tax irregularities, you can see an improvement in terms of the dip from 199 million down to 29 million. We need to know what were the appropriate measures put in place so we can capitalize on that and see a good thing. Stores irregularities moves along with procurement. Definitely items procured will go into stores. So if irregularities are going up from 37 million to 846, it's no surprise that the stores irregularities has followed suit from 2.7 million to 11.5. If you take contract irregularities, looks like they have a normal curve because they are always at the top. From 94, 87, 89, there is no dip that is commendable in a discussion. So I think that we need to look at what accounted for places where we have recorded successes in the dip in the amounts. But in the one that there are quantum leaps, I think that then the law is not biting. As we keep saying, can we name the persons, recover the amounts involved and punish them? The three together makes it shameful to get involved in this. Until we start frying some big fishes to send the right signal, then you can be sure that people down there would continue to embezzle, to misappropriate, and to also misapply resources that we need to develop this country.
Thank you for those preliminary comments. I'll take a short break. When I come back, I have two more questions. The AG's power to disallow and surcharge seems to have gone with Domelevo. When Domelevo's Auditor General's report came out last year, he disallowed and surcharged specific things. I've combed through this, I haven't seen it. Then we'll deal with some specific issues in the district assemblies one, which I know you are very interested in as well because of your work. This is the point of view. We're trying to give you a quick understanding of two key audit reports with two experts. Stay with us, we'll be right back.
Good Day Energy Drink keeps you going. Available in major supermarkets and shops near you. Excessive drinking can be detrimental to your health. Not recommended for persons under 18 years, lactating mothers, pregnant women, and people sensitive to caffeine. This advert is FDA approved.
Getting GoTV was the best decision James has ever made. See, finding a good place to watch football was never easy, but it was costly. Until one day, James discovered something big. Now he can finally enjoy the perks of home ground advantage. Get home ground advantage when you get GoTV. For just 89 CDs, you can enjoy the world's biggest leagues and cup competitions this football season. GoTV. Love it.
Mama Josie. Fe.
Different era, better result. Time has changed and time has brought Kel Charcoal Toothpaste, healthy gums, anti-cavity, fresher breath, and it whitens teeth. Kel Chocolate Toothpaste. Sankofa.
Yenchi. Kel Chocolate Toothpaste.
Happy smile.
Welcome back to The Point of View. Tonight we're trying to break into two key audit reports, one on the state agencies and the other on DACF. My guest, Dr. Abdallah Ali Nachia, Senior Lecturer, Ghana School of Law or Department of Law or Faculty of Law as well. And of course, Dr. Auditor General, who is the IAADG, so Internal Audit Agency Director General. So as I was asking, the AG's power to disallow and surcharge seems to have gone with Domelevo. Occupy Ghana went to court and secured a victory where in 2017 it was clearly stated that the Auditor General had the power to not just say you've done wrong, but to say I've disallowed this expenditure and I'm surcharging you to find it and pay it back. What's your reading of that whole experience? Because this report doesn't seem to have any disallowance or surcharge.
I think it's a legal provision, and it is in the Audit Service Act, which gives the Auditor General the power to surcharge and then disallow. And there are circumstances under which they can surcharge and disallow. If the auditor feels strongly on the basis of the audit evidence gathered that an individual or group of individuals or an organization would have to be surcharged, he has every right to make that recommendation. The challenge is that once that recommendation is made, he can go to court or he can allow the appropriate prosecutorial agency to pick it up. What the difference between Mr. Dan Domelevo and the current acting Auditor General is that when he disallows, he wants to go to court and make sure that the funds are paid back to government chest. I have not seen that happening. Maybe this is the first audit report that the current acting Auditor General has issued. So maybe he may want to try it. But I think that it is a legal provision, it is mandatory, it is provided for in law, and it is within the right of the Auditor General to apply it, except that you have to go to court when you have relevant and reliable audit evidence to support the surcharge. Else, when you surcharge somebody or a group of individuals, what they can do is that they can also come up with a very strong defense. And once they come up with a strong defense and they are able to defend themselves, the court would also set aside the disallowance and the surcharge. So he will weigh the audit evidence he has before going to court. Otherwise, it did not go with Mr. Dan Domelevo. It is a law.
Some people also felt that the Auditor General, in exercising his powers, must be subject to Parliament. That issue came up, and I feel I think Mr. Kandapa expressed that view some time ago. He used to be Public Accounts Committee. Occupy Ghana said no. The Auditor General just gives his work to Parliament and does not necessarily need to be subservient to what Parliament says about the accounts he does. Where do you sit on that?
No, I think I want to agree with that because, you see, Auditor General is an external auditor for the Republic of Ghana. He presents his reports to Parliament. Parliament sits as Ghanaians receiving an external report. It's like shareholders. If corporate Ghana is a company, the owners of corporate Ghana are Ghanaians. And these Ghanaians are represented by Parliament. The Ghanaians have appointed their external Auditor General. He sent his report to Parliament. It is up to Parliament to insist on implementation of the recommendations. That is it.
Dr. Ali, what do you make of this annual ritual of publishing accounts and then all of us lamenting about it and then nobody seems to pay anything or bear any brand? I mean, is it not making audit function lose its essence in the country?
Thank you very much. Before I answer that question, I wanted to examine a statement you made on the response of GNPC.
Yes.
On whether they are not a public entity and the Auditor General may have had it wrong.
Yes.
I was thinking that under the GNPC Act, Section 12 on accounts and audit is clear. That the Auditor General shall each year audit the books and accounts of the corporation.
GNPC
and okay. So I'm surprised that it is an issue that they are not. I'm trying to get the.
Let me put the issue in context. The issue in context. The Auditor General said GNPC failed to seek parliamentary approval in 5 international agreements. Therefore, they've breached Article 1815, which essentially says you need parliamentary approval for international business transactions. GNPC says this provision strictly relates to government, quote-unquote, business, and not generally to statutory corporations set up for commercial purposes. They then...
But even with that, Bernard, you can look at Section 15, borrowing powers. Section 15.2 says, subject to Article 181 of the Constitution, the power of the corporation to borrow money shall be exercisable only on the recommendation of the minister and with the approval of the minister responsible for finance as to the amount, source of the loan, and the term and conditions under which the loan may be effected. So at least there is that element of seeking that approval. And that is why I wanted to have the details. I think the time is not enough for us.
They seem to be saying that they are operationally autonomous as an agency of government.
But not when public funds are somehow related to your operations. Immediately there's an element of it. You will be brought under the purview of the government's watchdog, being the Auditor General. So I think that, as you rightly said, I'm at pains at having audit and all that being a ritual. I have always indicated with the Office of Special Prosecutor, I thought we would be able to rationalize some of these infractions and get him to investigate and prosecute. As we indicated on the surcharges, I was also looking for areas of a surcharge, and as Dr. Sain said, maybe the fear of people going to court to get it set aside. But indeed, if we would use the proper mechanisms and get the rightful institutions that can prosecute to take it up and pursue for the recovery of the monies, then we will be giving meaning to the audit reports. Else it becomes an annual ritual which brings nothing back into government coffers. We need the revenue that has been misapplied. If it is a loan, remember taxpayers' money would be taken to go and pay back the loan. And so it is public money, we need to retrieve them. If Public Accounts Committee goes through this audit report, it is incumbent that respective institutions with the power to investigate and prosecute be made to take it up. And we shouldn't let it be as a sweeping under the carpet as it has always been. Because the trajectory of the years from 2016 to 2020 is showing us that we are not making headway, with the exception of the few that we saw a dip in 2020. So why don't we take the report serious and take it to the full end and see how much of this 12.85 billion we can get back into the coffers? That is one way we can make people sit up and know that the time of reckoning would come. All what they've acquired with any ill-gotten money will be retrieved from them. Because in the case, failing to even take security against and the protection of state property and revenues, it's something that makes you a person that has to account, and properly so. So I think that we should get to business.
Thank you.
Ensure prosecution and recovery.
Doc, what's your comment on GNPC's response to the Auditor General?
I think I find it interesting because, as Dr. Ali Nachia said, it is clear that it is a state institution and they are acting on behalf of government and the state. And the Public Financial Management Regulations and the Public Financial Management Act is clear. It is not for nothing that the regulations 192 to 206 of the Public Financial Management Regulations provide for state-owned enterprises and public corporations. So I think they fall within the ambit of the PFM Act, and the Auditor General has a duty and a mandate to audit that institution as well.
Can we say the increasing rate of infractions in some of these categories is because of a failure of the institution that you had? Because if I look at the 5 wings of the Public Financial Management Act, the 5th one is audit, of which one is external, one is internal. Your group's job is to make sure that what the external guy finds is very minimal. So you are a preventive agency.
That's right.
And you've been in existence for at least almost 20 years.
That's right.
So how come we are seeing an increase in irregularities when we have over 1,800 internal auditors in Ghana?
Internal auditors are doing their best. I mean, internal auditors by law are required to audit their institutions on a quarterly basis. Every quarter they submit reports. The challenge is that some of these irregularities reported in the external auditors report may have been reported already by the internal auditors. And when they are reported, we have an audit committee that should pursue management to implement these recommendations. Many a time they do their best to pursue them, but the implementation becomes difficult. The challenge internal auditors in this country have is that they are under different institutions.
Okay.
So the internal auditors within the local governments or the MMDAs are under Office of the Head of Local Government Service. So they are subject to their conditions of service. Those are the ministries are under Office of Head of Civil Service. Those under the corporations and statutory institutions like GNPC, Graphic, etc. are under SIGA. Now, when they are scattered like that, they are subject to different conditions of service, and the people they are expected to check, they are the same people who determine their conditions of service. So then it becomes extremely difficult for them to act. I must say that most of these infractions may have been seen by the internal auditors, reported on it, but management in this institution have just failed to implement the recommendations. The solution then is move all these internal auditors from these institutions, create an internal audit service, put them under that one, give them that independence and objectivity they need, then they can bite the
They are
ball.
not looking over their shoulders.
That is it. And then you see, there is the before and the after. So you are asking the question, where do we go from here? When the external auditors submit the report like that, they have finished with their work. Ordinarily, it is up to the internal auditors to work with the audit committees to push management to implement these recommendations. But even when they push management will then draw their attention that come the end of the month, you come to me for your allowances. Some are even punished for raising certain issues or the red flags. Some are posted to remote areas. So I think that we have to take internal audit.
Is the internal audit agency positioned to become an internal audit service?
That is what we are working at, because the current law really does not help public sector internal audit. So at the moment, there is a bill that the Ministry of Finance is considering to move the internal audit agency into a service. And once it becomes a service, all these internal auditors will be under the service, so then they can have the required independence and objectivity to protect government funds.
Let me take Dr. Ali's view on that. Doc, maybe because Doc is the head of DG of IIA, he may be saying this. Do you get the logic of what he's saying? That the internal auditors are looking over their shoulders, therefore they can't really do the work they have to do. If you give them an autonomous service, they can really do the preventive work. What do you think?
I share his view, because let me explain. The internal audit is to ensure that internal controls work. And when we talk about internal controls, we say it is the whole system of controls, financial or otherwise, established by management to protect the assets of the entity and also to ensure that the right thing is done. Now, if the internal controls that is being implemented by the internal auditor is part of management, then you should know that he is under their control and they can do whatever they want if they disagree with him. And I've indicated that in every institution where the internal auditor is having challenges with management, then indeed management does not require the support. Otherwise, he is the one person who makes sure you are on track, you obey the laws of procurement, of spending, and the use of funds. He should be your eye and your ear on the ground. So if you despise such a person, definitely you will suffer infractions. And I will tell you that they have established over 421 internal audit units in various institutions. And I'll be happy if Dr. Drosan would get his reports also published, like the Auditor General, and you would realize that the total financial infractions they have uncovered for 2022 is 506.4 million, out of which 386.7 million, representing 76.3%, has been rectified. So out of the 506.4 million, they've been able to rectify 76.3 of that. Wow. So definitely, if they are allowed to ensure the right thing is done, by the time the external auditor, being the Auditor General, will get on the ground, things would have been put in place, or the extent of any devastation, as I would put it, would have been minimized. Indeed, if you look at their recommendations, they also observe 2,527 infractions in their audit. And the recommendations they made was to the monetary value of 122.4 million. So if they are within and are not allowed to point out infractions, to guide management not to go into infractions, we would have a challenge. Okay. If they have that autonomy or near independence, they would be able to do a lot of work. And when the Auditor General goes, indeed, in all external audit, we are advised and trained that you try to check the internal controls. If they are well set out, then you can rely on the work of the internal auditor. So we need to strengthen them, and then there will be the preventive mechanism and reduce these exposures.
Let's go now to the District Assembly Common Fund and the audit. I noticed two problems. First problem, this is paragraph 27. They are not being given the right amounts. Article 2522 of the Constitution mandates Parliament to annually make provision for allocation of not less than 5% of total revenues of Ghana to DACF. However, the Ministry of Finance has consistently released less than 5%. In 2018, they got 4.0%, 4.07%. 2019, 3.79%, is even coming down. So they don't get a 5%. So that's problem one. Problem two, clause 3 of that article requires that the money accrued by the these assemblies in the Common Fund should be distributed based on a formula approved by Parliament. Now, the audit noticed that contrary to the above, the administrator allocated portions of the fund to institutions that were not part of the formula. National Education Policy, NADMO, Ministry of Local Government, National Youth Authority, School Feeding Program. So number one, they are not receiving the amount they want, they are to get. And they're also not sharing the way they are supposed to share. Then they go on to now give you specific instances. For example, even though the administrator, for example, sent money to NYA, and that money was used to make payments which are not authorized. So, for example, we are told that if you look at administrator, they allocated funds for Parliament to Zoom Lion for management of youth in sanitation. And this was for an amount of 270 million, being a 500 CD per personnel in one of their modules. This 270 million increased to 324 million in 2019, not by formula. Paragraph 40, more serious. They paid Zoom Lion 3.8 million for fumigation and SIP services for 38 newly created assemblies for the first quarter of 2018, when the assemblies had not even been in operation, and you were part of this creation. The assemblies were inaugurated in March. Meanwhile, the agreement with Zoom Lion took effect from April. So they were paid before work was done. When they were asked, they said, oh, Zoom Lion will do another work to make that payment justified. Finally, they also paid 95 million cedis to a company called Lavender Hill and Mudor Facility, which I think belongs to the same group. Again, the Auditor General says there was no basis for the payment. They recommend the administrator to recover the total payment for Seaway Systems Limited. You are a local government expert. What is going on here?
Thank you very much. I think with a 5%, not less than 5% transfer is a constitutional requirement. It is a constitutional requirement, and it is expected that the Minister for Finance releases that funds to the Administrator of Common Fund. Except that we need to audit the figures well, because it is not less than 5% of the actual tax revenue, and in the Supreme Court has defined what goes into this tax revenue. So I really do not understand why the amount released to the Administrator of Common Fund is less than the constitutionally mandated 5%. So if it is less than that, the Administrator of Common Fund would have to go in for the rest. And I agree with the Auditor General.
That they can go there.
They can go there.
Before you answer the second question, I'll take a short break. The second question is about how they allocate the money without recourse to the formula. That's why I want you to come back. Hold on, I'll come back to you on that. This is the point of view. We're discussing two big audit reports. Stay with us.
Good Day Energy Drink keeps you going. Available in major supermarkets and shops near you. Excessive drinking can be detrimental to your health. Not recommended for persons under 18 years, lactating mothers, pregnant women, and people sensitive to caffeine. This advert is FDA approved.
From weekend warrior to workhorse, when you get behind the wheel of the new MG ZS. The luxurious sedan experience meets the rugged frontier spirit of the SUV. Indulgently generous interiors, hill start assist system for unwanted uphill traffic, and the touchscreen infotainment system with Apple CarPlay for easy mobile phone. Designed for the driven.
Whatever the occasion, with ATL, you can never be out of style. ATL, bringing fabric to life.
Welcome back. We're still looking at the Auditor General's reports on two key agencies, one on statutory boards and state institutions, the other on the Judicial Assembly Common Fund. We're dealing with the DACF now. Guest Dr. Irregularities, who's the DG of the Internal Audit Agency, Dr. Ali Nachia, who is a tax expert and also a senior lecturer in law. You were saying that in respect of the issue of the allocation, the administrator should just make sure Parliament or Finance Minister does the right thing.
That is so, because it's a constitutional requirement, so we are not supposed to break the Constitution. So it is very strange to me that the Auditor General is saying that funds transferred is less than the constitutionally mandated 5%. So they will have to pursue it and ensure that we comply.
And it's even going down.
Yes, and we should make sure that we comply with the 5% by a constitutionally mandated amount.
But the issue of the way they spend the money, they are not using the formula. They are saying that the amount, the formula doesn't include some of the institutions they are paying the monies to.
This boils down to parliamentary oversight, because under the Constitution, Article 252 requires Parliament to approve the formula. And it is up to Parliament to make sure that the funds are disbursed according to the formula. So if for some reason funds are disbursed outside the approved formula by Parliament, then the administrator has questions to answer. So again, parliamentary oversight. Parliament will have to make sure that the administrator complies with the distribution formula so approved by Parliament.
But there was also the issue of monies paid at source. So instead of releasing the full money to the assemblies, about roughly 22 to 25% of all the monies are sort of paid to private contractors who have done some work for the assemblies. So they are they don't get to the district assembly before they are reallocated. Is that a problem?
Well,
that's like re-centralization. You are decentralizing.
No,
right?
it's not re-centralization. You know, it can happen from two areas. When the assemblies themselves commit to passing a resolution because they have asked the contractor to do some work for them, send this resolution to the administrator to deduct the money and pay to them, to the contractor as source. That is one part. The other part is where the administrator also undertakes bulk procurement so that government will benefit from discount and does the distribution to the local government. Whichever way you look at it, if deductions goes beyond 25%, then it's a problem. And I think we should discourage the assemblies from passing such resolutions. And then also, if the administrator can buy it in bulk, and they can prove to us that buying in bulk gives us some level of discount and economies of scale comes in, I think they can go along those lines. But I know that the current government promised reducing deduction at source. So if it goes,
they
beyond
reduce
25%,
it from 76. So 76% was paid to the assemblies in 2019.
That's right.
It reduced to 74%.
That's right.
So it's actually worsening.
In some years,
it's getting worse.
Well, in some years it was 30%. So what we need to do is to monitor, to make sure that deduction at source reduces to the barest minimum.
All right, Dr. Ali Nachia, there are a couple of problems here. The assemblies themselves, the DACF is not getting the full amount it's supposed to get. The 5% is not getting. It's also not following the formula prescribed, giving money to people who are not supposed to even be given, and retaining 25% of money and paying it at source. Clearly, this is wrong on many levels, is it not?
It is, which is why the Auditor General captures it as infractions. Because if the Constitution has made a provision for you, you cannot set it aside if you don't have a basis. And I think that the direct payment from the administrator to companies is what is causing these infractions. Otherwise, if it had gone to the assembly, if Zub Lion has not got a contract, the assembly is not in place. How come you could do work for me if I did not exist? This is not a case of pre-incorporation contract. I don't exist. What are you fumigating and where are you fumigating for who? And then come to think of the 95 million to Systems Ghana Limited. This is how the assembly is losing. And I think that aside the District Assembly Common Fund, we need to look at how the assemblies can be assisted to raise revenue. Discussions have been ongoing about property taxation to give them a sustainable source of revenue. But I think that this direct payment for me is an infraction. We need to obey the laid down procedures and rules. Else there is avenue for payments that are not deserving. And I agree with the Auditor General that the 3.8 million to Zoom Lion, 95 million to Systems Ghana Limited should be recovered. They have to retrieve it. And we need to follow through to ensure the money is paid back.
So what can Parliament do? Because this report we are discussing, I'm not sure Parliament has invited the groups yet. From the way the flow of the audit process is, the initial audit is done, management's response is incorporated, recommendations are made saying that this is my conclusion. Parliament gets it. Parliament invites the same group and says, I want to understand why you did this and why you should show cause that we shouldn't do whatever. Where should it end? Let me start with Ali first. Based on your understanding of this, how does this end? Is it just Parliament does a public show, we watch TV, we say, hey, I assemble, then we just go and sleep? Or what must follow?
Okay, the due process in any audit is that you give the auditee the opportunity to respond to your findings. Once the responses come in and they fall within the ambit of the law, then the aspects that have been well explained are expunged from the audit report. So for me, if they are to appear before Parliament, it is to answer questions that had not been completed before the audit report was issued. Because remember, the Auditor General works within timelines. So if he gave you a time to respond and you did not send your response on time, he is going to finalize his report and submit. That is the situation why you appear before Parliament to now offer the explanation. But the challenge is this. If you offer the explanation to Parliament, Parliament is not the Auditor General. So they may refer you to submit it to the Auditor General for reconciliation. So if that is done and still your explanation does not sit with the findings of the Auditor General, he will go ahead to finalize, and that is the point at which I believe he can search at. And that can be defended because you'll be given the opportunity. You came with a response that was still not accurate, or you did not even respond. Then the surcharge would be justified. For those who were able to succeed on surcharges, it was because they had the explanation that I wasn't given the opportunity to respond. Then, of course, natural justice, you must give him a fair hearing. But otherwise, if you look at the case of Occupy Ghana against Attorney General, at that point, people started slowing down on all these infractions because they knew the outcome. But now people know we can go to court, it can be set aside. They have resumed. And that could explain the huge increases in 2020. That is why I'm saying the surcharges should follow the due process so that there will be no opportunity for anybody to dance out of the ring when you have been caught in the infractions.
Doc, in studio, what do you think of this issue? Surcharges as the main deterrent?
Surcharges is one of the deterrents, but I also think that once the Auditor General has released its report, it's now the duty of the audit committees and the internal auditors to pursue management to implement the recommendations. So from here, what the audit committees are doing is that they are convening meetings and they are pursuing management. And I can tell you that we held a meeting with all the audit committee chairpersons across the country, and they have started pursuing management to implement these recommendations even before Public Accounts Committee starts sitting. So you hear of the audit committees working very soon. And I believe that at the Public Accounts Committee, we expect that some of the audit committee chairpersons would appear before them and then report on progress towards implementing these recommendations. The surcharges must continue because if you don't surcharge, people will think that it's a field day. And I must also say that if you want to surcharge and disallow, the audit evidence must be strong, watertight, so people cannot jump out of the circle, as Dr. Ali Nacha said.
So you are thinking not just of punitive, but also corrective?
Definitely.
With the internal audit committees?
Definitely. As an internal auditor, what we do is that we try to look at the administrative weaknesses and lapses that allowed these things to occur on one breath. On another breath, we get the audit committees to pursue them to implement the recommendations. Where there is a need for recovery, we recover. Where there is the need to pursue them to maybe get the Auditor General to disallow, we do that. So it is now within the mandate of the audit committees and the internal auditors to ensure implementation.
Let me ask Dr. Ali a final question. It's a statement a listener sent, a viewer says, a research report estimates that over 60% of taxes do not make it into government accounts. 25% of this is embezzled by tax officials, and 35% is given off in frivolous tax waivers for family and friends, as well as tax avoidance by corporations with complicity of tax officials and politicians. Then he goes on to give other details. What do you make of this vis-a-vis the tax irregularities we have seen? Does this claim hold any water in your line of work?
Thank you very much. I've been looking at the tax irregularities, and I have a little challenge, because if you talk about the taxes that are owed, you find out that it is not only the tax liability, but also interest and penalties. Mm-hmm. But here we are with the new Income Tax Amendment Act 1065, where because of COVID, we are trying to ease the burden on taxpayers. Mm-hmm. And so waiving interest and penalties if they pay up the actual liability. Okay. Then the whole amount being stated. If taxpayers comply with this new law and pay up their liabilities, they will have the interest and penalties being waived, and that would not constitute an infraction, but an application of the law. In the case of the amounts not reaching the coffers because of embezzlement, I think that is why the Quality Assurance Unit was set up in the Ghana Revenue Authority. They are supposed to be like an internal control mechanism on the work that their colleagues have done, and also new matters that are coming before them. So I think that it behoves on us to examine those that are involved in that and be able to get them out of the system. We will recover the monies they have embezzled and also ensure that the law deals with them. And for issues about infractions by way of tax exemptions, I think that is why there has been discussions on the passage of the tax exemptions bill, so that if an act exists to regulate and determine how exemptions should be granted, we will not have people trying to beat the system. And in any case, no one can today grant exemptions, because under Article 1742 of the Constitution, it is only Parliament that can approve such exemptions, because it states that where any person or authority or body is given power to waive, vary, or suspend a tax, it cannot do so without the prior approval of Parliament. So any such waivers are illegal, and I think that the tax exemptions bill should be dealt with quickly, so we trace and track whoever is involved in granting undue exemptions and deal with it.
We have to end it here. I've been speaking to Dr. Square, Dr. Ali Nachia. Abdel Ali Nachia is a senior lecturer at University of Ghana School of Law. He's a tax expert and also a lawyer. Dr. Auditor General is a lawyer, and also you can call him a finance expert, because he's a DG of the Internal Audit Agency, and he's been speaking to us on the issue. Doc, thank you. Dr. Ali Nachia, thank you as well. That's all we have time for tonight's edition of The Point of View. Hope you've learned something new. And mind you, the City Business Dashboard is next. Stay with City TV. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
The Point of View is brought to you by Cowbell Coffee. Cowbell Coffee. Taste it, love it. Kel White Charcoal. Happy smile.